You're watching the ZNS Network, the People's Station.
Coming up in the news, chairman of the local COVID-19 task force giving an update. Also, a member of parliament weighing in on the rise in sexual offenses against women and children. And the Rotary Club of Lakai giving the Rand Memorial Hospital a much-needed donation. The Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition, starts now.
This is the Bahamas Tonight, Northern Edition.
Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Shashina Wolf-Farkas, and as always, it is so great to have you with us. Topping news tonight, we begin with an update on Grand Bahama's fight against the coronavirus. The chairman of the COVID-19 task force is commending Grand Bahamians for following the restrictive measures that are now in place. He says because of this, the numbers on the Northern Island are down. He says the task force will continue to do all that they can to ensure that there are no major increases going forward. Our Talia Hall has our top story. For the past several weeks, COVID-19 numbers on Grand Bahama have been significantly low. Health officials confirming that for the past 2 weeks, there have been 0 hospitalizations. Now, head of the COVID-19 task force on Grand Bahama, Dr. Bartlett says while this is good news, there's a new variant of the virus that is very infectious.
Causing problems in our neighbors, specifically the United States, where their numbers for the greater part in most of the areas are going up, even though now we see some numbers trending down in some of the states in the United States. We are still going to remain, and we still have a need to remain vigilant. We still have to adhere to the social guidelines. This should not be a call to going back to business as usual.
He says persons must still social distance and wear masks until the numbers are reduced globally. He adds that the COVID-19 task force is now faced with a challenge, which is the request for events by residents.
When we review those, one thing we have to take into consideration now is that although the numbers are down, all it takes is for one or a few cases of that variant to make its way into our community for us to be back into a surge again. And so we're trying to avoid that as much as possible.
He says there are procedures that must be followed.
You can call the Office of the Prime Minister for guidance as to what should be done, and be aware of the different types of permits you need to acquire before you host any events.
Since November of last year, a 5-day rapid antigen test became a requirement for all international arrivals. Bartlett gave an update as to whether or not Grand Bahamians are following the regulation.
In those persons, we tend to follow up with those persons. Definitely the ones who would test positive, we do follow up with those. But we know that we still have some outliers who not tested on day 5. But we put mechanisms in place to ensure that all the persons who are coming into our community after having travel are tested on day 5.
And the question that many residents have been asking is, why hasn't the 10 p.m. curfew been lifted or relaxed if the numbers on Grand Bahama have been low?
Now, looking at, we have travelers coming in. We have travelers coming into the United States where they still have a high burden of disease. So as long as you have those persons coming in, and most of our cases, probably over 95% of the cases that we have tested positive are related to travel. If not just persons necessarily coming in, but persons making applications to travel even to Nassau, a lot of them are tested positive.
Now, Bartlett says the curfew along with the restrictions have proved to be impactful in a positive way. He says the numbers on Grand Bahama must remain low for a minimum of 14 days to 28 days before the health team can make any recommendations for changes to the current restrictions. Italia Hall, ZNS Network News. Thank you, Tally. Meanwhile, the Bahamas receiving recognition recently by an international organization for its fight against COVID-19. The country was listed as one of just 27 countries that have largely tamed the COVID-19 pandemic. The list was released by EndCoronavirus.org, a self-described international volunteer coalition of over 4,000 scientists and other community stakeholders. Some of the other countries include Australia, New Zealand, Cambodia, Dominica, Fiji, Iceland, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Taiwan. Head of Grand Bahamas COVID-19 Task Force, Dr. Bartlett, says that this is indeed good news for the country.
It means a lot. It means that all our efforts have not been in vain. That's the main message from this side. The battle against COVID-19 is still ongoing. The fact that we have low numbers and we have no hospitalizations over the last 2 weeks here in Grand Bahama speaks volumes for our efforts. And not only on the front lines with the healthcare workers, but hats off to the community for their response and those who were committed to adhering to the guidelines that we have in place. We should be very, very proud of what we have achieved.
Now, as the global pandemic continues, more and more Caribbean destinations are launching extended stay programs for those able to work remotely. And the Bahamas has also hopped on board. Tonight, we speak to the tourism boss on Grand Bahama, who says it is an opportunity for visitors who enroll in the program to explore the country in new ways. Here's Jamila Mizik with this report.
The Ministry of Tourism recently launching the Bahamas Extended Access Travel Stay BEATS program. General Manager at the Ministry of Tourism in Grand Bahama, Stephen Johnson, says the initiative is to attract visitors and foreign students to study and work in the Bahamas, offering those persons a chance to live on island for a year or island hop to any one of 16 islands throughout the length of their stay.
If you're working remotely in the Bahamas, it's $1,025 for the permit, and you can stay up to a year, and it's $525 for students. We are seeing record-breaking numbers over in Nassau, and also we're doing pretty good in Grand Bahama. So we're putting the word out to everybody, and while COVID-19 is going on, we're encouraging people to come out. While we think we have high numbers of COVID cases throughout the Bahamas, the average visitor look at us as having very low numbers, and they look at the islands of the Bahamas as safe. I just came back from Canada, and a number of Canadian travel agents have been calling me and want to find out how can we get their clients down from Canada to Grand Bahama. And so this is a favorable response for us.
Johnson says so far many visitors are considering the Bahamas over any other destination, which is great news for tourism in the country. And he says the safety measures will remain in place as all incoming visitors must follow current COVID protocols.
We can't let our guards down. We still have a long way to go. And we ask people to basically exercise all of the safety precautions here. Make sure you wear your mask, make sure you social distance, and make sure you do all the things you need to do to keep yourself safe. And so we're really happy where we're headed right now. We know many countries have been doing the vaccine, but we're excited when it comes here into the Bahamas in general. But we know we're going to beat COVID-19 as long as everybody do what they have to do.
Now, for those visitors looking to experience the BEATS program, they can visit bahamasbeats.com for more information. Jamila Mizik, ZNS Network News.
Well, if you have not heard by now, international visitors to the United States will be required to present a negative PCR test upon arrival in addition to being quarantined. The newly elected United States President Joe Biden making that announcement earlier today. According to whitehouse.gov, travelers will also be required to comply with other applicable CDC guidelines concerning international travel, including recommended periods of self-quarantine or self-isolation after entry to the U.S.
Yesterday, I signed an executive action that requires masks and social distancing on federal property. Today, we'll be signing additional executive action to extend masking requirements on interstate travel, like on trains, planes, and buses. And in light of the new COVID variants that you're learning about, we are instituting now a new measure for individuals flying into the United States from other countries. In addition to wearing masks, everyone flying to the United States from another country will need to test before they get on that plane, before they depart, and quarantine when they arrive in America.
Now, no further details have been given as to how long the self-quarantine or self-isolation periods may be. Switching gears now, recently released its crime statistics by the Royal Bahamas Police Force, raising some serious concerns. Tonight, the parliamentary secretary in the office of the Prime Minister with responsibility for information and communications is lending her voice to the fight against crimes against women. Megan Shepard has more.
The national crime statistics revealing that in 2020, reports of sexual offenses increased by 34%, with 213 cases, compared to 159 in 2019. These offenses include rape, unlawful sexual intercourse, and attempted rape. Parliamentary Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, Pakeisha Parker-Edgecombe, calling this increase frightening. She says that while all crimes should be taken seriously, those crimes against women and children should be of particular concern to the public. She's advocating for more legislation that will protect this vulnerable group.
And I will be lending my voice to this issue and definitely advocating for legislation to come by quicker. It is needed. I think that it is high time that our focus is specifically on women and young girls needing places to go so that they may feel safe. After all, you know, our community has a way of stigmatizing women who come forward and even young girls. So we definitely need legislation to put teeth into law and make sure that they are protected.
Parker-Edgecombe notes that there is often a stigma attached to women that do report crimes of a sexual nature. She notes that there may also be a fear of reporting crimes. She's encouraging women and young girls to stand up and speak out against any form of abuse.
What normally happens is when you have a spirit of dependency or you rely on someone else, you often think that you can't make it without that individual. And what we're saying here today is that you are strong, you have every right to leave a situation in which you are not comfortable, and that there are persons out there who will help you. You have to get that courage within you to know that at the end of the day, there are people out there who will assist you. So many women have spoken about the fact that even if they were to come forward, sometimes they may not feel safe because they may have to end up back in the environment. And that's why it's so important for them to have somewhere that they can go. And the call for safe houses, particularly on Grand Bahama at this time, is one of those areas in which we feel has to be done to ensure that when they do come forward, they're not sent back to the situation that they came out of.
Executive member of the National Women's Advisory Council, Raquel Beneby-Hart, adds that she believes that COVID lockdowns may have also increased the instances of violence against women and children.
Most persons are now, during lockdowns, they're home, unable to handle some of the economic and other social stresses that they may be faced with and their families are faced with. And unfortunately, the vulnerable are the ones who this frustration is taken out of. And so we have come to say that we are advocating for the elimination of this type of behavior against our women and against our children. And so, children were at home, and so even the sexual offenses have increased as well. So just not physical and mental abuse, but also sexual abuse have increased as well.
Hart says that as these groups continue to fight for more protective measures for women and children, particularly a safe haven house on this northern island, she's admonishing them to speak up and seek help.
We are encouraging the fast tracking of the legislation. We are also encouraging the safe houses. Grand Bahama at present does not have a safe house. And so sometimes we have to, at times, take women into our own homes to be able to provide that shelter and support for them and their children. And so we are encouraging others to lend your voice to this cry in our community. We are thankful to the Grand Bahama Resilience Center. We also have Dr. Pamela Mills and her team and others who are therapists therapists who are available to walk you through, to hold your hand. And so I'm encouraging persons, if you are finding yourself in that kind of situation, if you have any form of fear that because for economic purposes you feel that you have to stay within that situation, we say you don't have to. Feel free to call me. I'm Raquel Benaby Hart. My contact number is 443-3763, and we have a wonderful cadre of team of women who are ready, available, and able to provide the support necessary to you.
Megan Shepard, ZNS Network News.
Stay with us. There's more news on the other side of the break.